Hey there folks, Matt Leger here, Maple Grove Productions. Today I'm coming at you with some best practices around putting your fruit trees in the ground. There's all kinds of different opinions out there, as there should be, but here's what I use and some of the reasons why I've decided to go with this kind of method. So, number one, should you plant your trees in a square hole or in a circular hole? I say square hole, and the reason for that is that it will encourage the roots to travel outward. Especially a potted tree, if you're putting that in a circular hole, it's going to kind of stay bound in that same shape. So by making a square hole, it's encouraging those roots to branch out in all kinds of different directions. It's also a lot easier to do. And when you use this kind of a spade, a square type shovel, you can make straight edges, right? As opposed to your usual shovel with a rounded end, it's going to make a scoop shape, a bowl shape, which you don't want because that's what drowns your roots and your trees. Another area that has a lot of mixed opinions is staking. Should you stake your trees? Should you not stake your trees? When should you stake your trees if you're going to? And it's a hot topic, but for me, I always stake my trees, and the reason is that there's a nasty wind channel here, so they're exposed to inordinate amounts of wind, which is not good. And also, question that's often asked is, should you tie your trees to your stakes? And I do, at least once, sometimes even twice if it's a very tall scion. Why should you tie your trees to the stake? Let's take a look at that and we'll try and understand why together. So first I'm going to dig my hole, my square hole. I've already hit clay. That's a whole other thing. Should you plant your trees in clay soil? Absolutely not. So now that I know there's clay here, what I'm going to have to do is build my tree mound up. Instead of digging down, I'm going to have to use some dirt from somewhere else. I've actually got some right next to me, which is very convenient, to make a mound instead. Yeah, I wasn't expecting that, but these are the kind of surprises that can happen. So again, don't plant into clay because you'll definitely end up with a bowl shape and most likely drown your roots. They're not going to be able to take hold in that. This is hard clay. So that's no good for baby trees. So all I'm going to do is take some of this dirt, make a little layer on top, and then this will then be my base point. I'm going to use very little liquid on this spot too, since there's going to be poor drainage. I already know. The last couple were draining pretty poorly as well, so I'll have to be very careful with that. But that should be enough. Here comes the stake. If you're going to use a stake, try and use something made of natural materials like a stick, bamboo, that sort of thing. We're going to be reusing these quite a bit, and I have other uses for them for other projects. That's why we ended up going with these plastic ones. But those other 8-footers I got last time, I'm not getting those anymore. These are about half the price, if not less, and will do the job just as well. And since they're thinner, they go in easier. Let's see if we can get past this layer of rocks and clay here. With these stakes, you have to be so careful not to break them also. It helps to have two people, one person pushing down on the bottom, the other person pushing on the top. Try and get it as straight as possible without breaking it. It's pretty good right there. So it's not down very far. It's only about a foot down maybe. But it's nice and secure, so that'll do. Next we're going to line up our tree. It's going to be the last apple that we have going in this season, which is the Sweet 16 apple. Let's imagine this is you and you're about to plant your tree. Again, I don't want to keep this exposed to the wind or the elements for very long, but just for demonstration purposes. Here's the graft point, so we don't want to go any higher than that in our burying. But here, since we're building up, we're gonna have to use our imagination and try and imagine what this is gonna look like when it's all said and done. For our experiment, we'll try and imagine what it would be like without tying the tree to the stake and just using the tree protector. You can see right away, no matter which way I turn it, there's going to be a piece sticking out that way, this way. I could put it like this, but then it's got a weird thing going on here. So that hopefully explains to you why it's important to tie your trees. I like to do one at the bottom and one at the top. Some people do one in the middle. It's your personal preference, but it should be based on what the trees need. So in this case, I want my roots to be right around there. Now, should I tie it on now, or should I tie it on once I filled it in? I personally like to tie it in after. What are the advantages, disadvantages of doing that? Well, if I tied it in now, it pretty much affixes it there and I can't move it. I can't adjust it as needed. On the other hand, if I don't tie it, I can pack it in, adjust it as needed. When it's all good and the way I like it, then I can tie it on. So that's the way I prefer to do it. But both methods may work depending on how you're doing this thing. Here's our dirt. It'll be an interesting experiment here because this is not the dirt that was in the ground either. This is actually like peat moss potting mix, so I don't know what's going to happen. I hate to experiment on a young tree like this, but it is what it is. I probably should have mixed that in with some of the native soil though. But I'm hoping that with this sod here, it'll kind of make up for it. With this one here, I don't want to use a lot of water. It's already sitting on clay. I don't want to water directly in the hole this time because of all that clay, so I'm going to try it on top instead. Looks like I made myself a couple helpers here coming out, so you take all the help you can get when you can get it. So the drainage is good, but that's not surprising because this is potting mix. So now I'm going to add some elements of native soil back with this upside down sod. Hopefully that'll do the trick. It's going to be a Sweet 16 experimentation. No, I don't want it too compact, so... Ooh, I made a great mess of things.
It's right here.
One of the major reasons why you want to tie off your trees is that whenever the spring comes and the snow starts to melt, it's going to pull down the scion. This little tree is going to get pulled down, and what happens is two different parts will come together and they'll snap. So by tying it off, it keeps it close to the stake, keeps it moving with the stake, and you don't want to tie it on too tightly. And in the spring, we can come by and take those off, take the tree protectors off. If it's doing well enough, we can even take the stake off and just let it grow. So last thing we have to do is put on our tree protector. And that is to protect against rodents and also from snow and ice damage. These are a lot nicer than the last ones we had. Again, important things to remember. Stake your tree. Use bamboo or wood if you can, instead of plastic unless you're planning to reuse them. Tie off your trees. If you have to, tie it at the bottom and also at the top. If you can get away with one in the middle, that's fine too. Don't forget to let your tag through. And also, one other note, which is a huge best practice, is to write down and log what these trees are, because these little tags here can come off, they can break, or they'll get worn out and you can't read it. So make sure you know what this tree is. Write it down somewhere. Another tip is to use the tree protectors that come with your trees. If your tree didn't come with any, or if you're grafting your trees yourself, then you'll have to get some, or maybe you know another way to not have to use them, that's fine. I like the tree protectors because they protect against rodents and snow and ice damage, as I said. And also tying off protects against the melting snow so they don't get snapped in half. And that's pretty much it. We had to raise up our little tree mount here because we hit clay, which can happen. There's lots of areas here that have lots of clay and lots of stone, so you gotta work around that stuff. Or if we had hit another big root like we did before, we would have had to maybe plant behind the hoogle mound, on the other side, around, who knows. But this is gonna work nice. The only other thing left to do is to put our compost on, top it off with some wood chips, and then we're done fruit trees for 2018. So that's it for today, my friends. Hope you enjoyed the video on best practices, tips, and tricks around planting your fruit trees, and we'll catch you on the next one. Take care.